to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane. Starring Ryan Rash.
Don't come for me unless I send for you.
And Dale Hummel.
We know today is all about Ryan.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel with co-star Ryan Rash.
How ya doing?
I haven't spoke to you for a little while here, but there's been a lot of things taking place this week. And on a positive note, I've been getting texts and videos of those competing in some virtual shows and feedback that's been very positive. And I know this is something new, and it's a very touchy subject with you, so I'm going to exclude you a little bit from this.
That would be a very wise idea at the moment.
For those of you that aren't aware, Ryan has been locked on Gay Hill for approximately a week, studying videos and pictures for virtual shows nonstop, and I think it's begun to get to him a little bit.
I have been through over 1,200 videos in the last 7 days.
That is impressive. I commend you. I don't think I could sit through that many of them, but there's a lot of young showmen out there that hopefully appreciate it, and it's giving them something to do, and that's kind of where we're at right now. With that, there is a little discussion about underground shows, and I have some positive news on that.
So do I. So you have yours, then I'll tell you about mine.
I don't know that we're going to agree on what's positive.
Yeah, we're not, but that's fine.
Okay, mine is there was a hog show held, and I'm going to talk about it. It originally was underground, but it's come out on Facebook, and the gentleman in charge is posting about it. But an underground hog show in the state of Indiana last weekend that was held very successfully. I believe it started off as an underground show, but word got out. To my knowledge, the mayor and the health department of that town joined in and actually had people there observing the show to make sure it was staying within the guidelines. And I believe right now in Indiana, it's 25 people or less. The show was orchestrated by invitation only in order to keep numbers down, not to try to exclude anybody, but in this time, we have to do something like that. So it's gone from an underground show to an above ground show that actually was very well received by the community, the people that participated, the show organizer, everything's positive. To my knowledge, they're going to try to do several more of these. And in my opinion, I think we're better off being above ground and being very open about it rather than maybe trying to hide some of these things. With that said, if we continue lockdown in the state of Illinois and some of the other states that are much more strict than Indiana, there are going to be people rebelling in every aspect, not just in the show ring, but just daily life. And once all the others rebel and it becomes a little more universal, then I'm maybe a little more in favor of, okay, we can bend the rules a little bit. But I know Ryan has some exciting news about that I'll let him share.
Well, first of all, there's a reason that Indiana is my favorite I-state. Obviously, this just adds to that list. Love all things Indiana. Now, if y'all would open up the Conrad Hotel again in Indy, then I would be the most excited because that's where I love to stay. But good for them for having an underground show, upground show. I don't care as long as it was a real show. That's all I care about right now. But I cannot give all the details to you, Dale, because you will probably rat me out. But anyway, I still do not know if I'm going to judge. I'm pretty almost 100% positive there are no shows in May that I will judge. There are a few hanging on for dear life in June. When I mean hanging on for dear life, like by thread, that we're still waiting on some government official to tell us whether we can go out there and like do something worthwhile besides sit here and be bored at home. But on July 4th, I am judging a damn pig show. It does not matter. I know I am. I know what's going down, and it's happening. And like I said, I can't tell Dale because he'll probably rat me out to the feds. But let me tell you something. I am the most excited about this. I am going to bring glitter and fireworks and sparklers and sprinklers. I don't know what I'm going to bring this thing, but it's going to be like, wah! And I do think it's funny that not the guy that contacted me about it per se, but somebody that's helping him with the show. I said, well, I'm just so excited to do it. He said, there weren't any options, dude. You're the only person in this industry that will get shot at or go to jail to judge a show.
So it worked. It was an easy decision.
I was like, well, you're right. I mean, that's probably not complimentary about me, but yeah, you're right. I'm probably the only person that will take a bullet or go to jail to judge a show right now. But yes, I will. So July 4th, I'm booked.
And I can hope by July 4th it will be legal wherever the show may be. And are you going to disclose this to me so I can
No.
Come and watch this show?
If it's legal by then, yes. If it's not legal, no, because you'll turn me in the feds and there'll be some SWAT team there to arrest me or something.
It's interesting. Every state's doing some things a little bit different. And I know there's actually a show or two here in Illinois in June that specific counties have requested that the shows come in because they are very much in defiance of our governor and wanting to prove a point. And I think we're going to see more and more of this as we go across the country on some of the states that are locked down so tight. On a positive note, Kentucky State Fair came out the other day and was very positive that they're planning on going forward with their state fair. And there's been a couple others do the same. On a negative, Ryan, did you say North Dakota had canceled?
North Dakota canceled their state fair. And I thought if any two state fairs in the union would be safe, it would be the Dakotas. Because, I mean, there's only like 25 people that live there.
You would think that would be a safe one.
But North Dakota canceled. I know Kentucky State Fair, I didn't see what you saw, but I know they're planning on having a fair because they contacted me and asked me to judge. Unfortunately, I was already booked for the day they wanted me to, but I knew they were planning on having a fair. And obviously, Indiana has, even their governor has, stated publicly that they're going to have a fair. And with them having, jackpot shows already, that's looking very good there. When I did my Facebook Live, a lot of people were asking me about the State Fair of Texas. And I mean, our State Fair doesn't even start till the 1st of October or like the last couple of days of September. I keep telling people, I don't think anybody can guess that far off. We got to get shows going now and just see, because the biggest problem with all of this is we don't know if there's going to be a second wave. When we go back out there, is this going to, get crazy and get contagious again or what? I mean, there's so many unknowns to all this. But the thing is, until we get out there and live life, we're not going to know. Nobody going to find out while we're all sitting bored at home at the house. So people, get out in the world. Do something. Even if they tell you you can't. The one good thing I'm going to say for Texas, Abbott signed an executive order that says you cannot go to jail for violating Miss Rona restrictions. So you may have to pay a fine, whatever, but you ain't going to go to jail. So I'm telling you, get out there and live your life, people. Please.
Ryan, you are ready to get out, and I hope everybody else is ready to go out. Beyond ready, and I hope you can soon. And it's frustrating as we're talking about some shows opening up and some states opening up. I become more frustrated each day because I still don't feel I have a firm grasp on COVID-19 and the positives and the negatives and the transmission, all the above. But the frustrating part to me right now is we keep talking about a balance. And unfortunately, I listened to some of the Senate hearing this morning on this exact topic, and it was frustrating from the standpoint. There's one thing that everybody seems to miss, and I'm one that would have missed it early on as well. The hidden health issues that we're dealing with from being locked down, shelter in place, board at home, whatever you want to call it. An example that I would like to use is screenings for serious cancer. Cervical, colon, and breast cancer is down 84%. And according to the IQIVA Institute, this amounts to 80,000 plus misdiagnoses in the 3-month period from March through June. Okay, you take that 80,000 and other issues that are there. We're just talking about pre-screening for cancer, not heart issues, not a lot of other diseases. That in itself nearly equals where we're at in terms of how serious COVID-19 has been from a mortality rate. So we have to be careful because this balance that we're talking about, we want to balance the health perspective or the medical side with the economy. And in all reality, by locking everybody at home and they're afraid to go to their doctor, they're afraid to get these screenings, it's almost a wash on the medical side, and we know what it's doing to our economy. So it seems very, very simple to me. Yet I listen to the Democratic side of the Senate argue that we need to be locked down through 2020 and into 2021.
Okay, that's your problem. You listen to the Democrats.
I shouldn't say listen. I heard their voice.
Because, I watched that too, and if you think any of that was balanced, you're crazy.
No, it was as political as I've seen anything, and we're talking about a very serious topic.
The first thing they said is this is going to be bipartisan. It was completely not bipartisan. Now, granted, the Republicans were not as bad as the Democrats, but it wasn't like every time they try to talk about something important, all those idiots that are in Washington that we have elected, just it's frustrating. But like, it was hard to watch for me personally.
And
I was the most angry.
and I haven't heard anything on China lately, other than there was somebody that made a comment that China's stealing our technology. They've stolen our manufacturing or taken over our manufacturing. I think they've done both, but guess what? We let them over the past 20 or 30 years. It's been absolutely open. They can send grad students over. They can get into some of the most in-depth research and any aspect that we're dealing with. And we basically have educated them. And then we talk about infringement on lots of different products and so forth, and how our manufacturing's there. We allowed a lot of this to happen. And I sure hope, I cannot imagine how this isn't a wake-up call to bring to light some of the issues that we have. And we need to start taking care of ourselves and protecting ourselves and our intellectual property, our research projects, all the above, because they're willing to take whatever they want. And when they unleashed or didn't prevent this from being unleashed on the world, that one's a hard one to swallow.
There hasn't been a whole lot of talk about communist China this week. I don't know if they're like letting them off the hook or what. I doubt that highly, but like most of the mainstream media has like all been on the Flynn Obamagate stuff of it all. But the best thing from the hearings I saw this morning is Dr. Fauci, even though I got some issues with that man. First off, he did not throw Trump under the bus like all the Democrats said he was going to. Number two, he did say that there was 8 different vaccines in the works, and he thought that all of them might or could be available by the end of the year. Which, if there's just one, that would be miraculous in this time frame.
And I think with 8 of them, he'd mentioned that we could cover the globe. It'd be so much easier if we have more than one. And I think that's a great direction that we're going. And I hope it's sooner than later.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you got to get on to your topic here, but I got to bring one thing up. Because I'm not going to get into Obamagate. I'm going to try to breathe and let the more information roll out before I like go crazy. But anyway, I am going to go crazy on an Obama. And today, it is going to be you, Miss Michelle. So, just before I put on these lovely little earphones and like ruin my hairdo again, I saw that she has now become the official spokesperson and partnered with Beyond Meat for a healthier America.
I think it's a good fit for her.
I think if you have studied that woman's anatomy, she didn't get built like that from eating tofu. So I'm just saying, I don't know what she thinks. That woman grew up in Chicago, the south side of Chicago. There was no Beyond Meat there. It literally drives me crazy to see hypocritical people like her out there doing stuff. She knows nothing about this product. I promise you, nothing. She's just been told that this is what she needs to do, and it's going to be... I mean, do y'all not remember her disaster with school lunches? Oh, God. Anyway, next.
Yeah, so my children still talk about that. That did not go well.
Oh, I cannot with her. But anyhow, that's my rant for the day. So all you people who love Michelle Obama, she is now the official cheerleader for fake meat. I mean, good for her.
Is she going to be an official cheerleader as a vice presidential candidate? I didn't hear her in the last.
No, I think she's, which thank God, because that would not help my boy Trump at all. But I think her cheerleading and fire batons will just be for the Beyond Meat and Biden on the sideline. What I do think is very, very interesting, and I'm secretly pulling for this to happen, is that Biden camp has kind of been pushing that Kamala Harris is the front runner for the VP slot, which I think that's great because, first of all, she's a train wreck in herself. She'd have one moment in 5 debates that was good, and the rest of it, all she did was spit, venom, rage, and yell at people incoherently. And the way that she literally attacked Biden on every issue she could during the debates, I don't know how they think this is a good idea, but the most important one, I think, is she was the biggest person when the Kavanaugh hearings were going down, that all women have to be believed, all this other stuff, which whatever, but just stick with your story. Now that Tara Reid is out there saying that Biden sexually assaulted her, now she got a different song and dance. So, Kamala, I think you would be a great running mate for Joe. You have got my vote to be his running mate in the Biden Biden campaign.
I think it'll really help when we talk about how many times she attacked Biden, and now they've got to come together and try to go one direction. It's going to be a challenge.
Oh, most.
We're going to move on to the topic. This episode is focused around the benefits or the trials and tribulations of being a member of a competitive livestock judging team. I'll talk a little bit about it in the high school ranks, but primarily focusing on the college. And I think Ryan and I both have a little bit of contrasting stories on how maybe we got involved into livestock judging and what it's done in terms of the direction of our life. But I'm going to start out with giving an example. And I've told this story before that my background is probably not the typical livestock breeder, judging coach background. Maybe it is. But I grew up on the very small town of Cabry, population just under 200 people. And we lived on the edge of this town, and I had an older brother and sister that were involved in raising some show pigs and raising some Southdown sheep, just a few of each. And their goal was to raise pigs and lambs that they could compete at the Chicago International. And they would go and have had a very successful run up there. I believe won a class or two on some of their home-raised animals. And this was all before I was even born. I was the best accident, is what my parents would tell you, that they ever had. I came along about 10 years after my next oldest sibling.
Wait, are you sure they just didn't call you an accident?
Some days I'm sure they did. Other days I'd get them to admit that I was a phenomenal accident.
Oh, okay. We'll go with your story.
But with that, so my older siblings were very much involved in raising livestock and showing competitively, as were my parents. When they graduated high school, the livestock went on their way, and I came along, and there wasn't a lot of interaction for me in terms of hands-on. I'm sure my parents had gone through it, and they thought, well, I don't need to go do chores in the middle of the winter and all these other things. The stock was gone. It was a little bit easier. My father was still employed as a livestock hauler, and I tell the story, the first memory I have of livestock was sitting on a gate at the Chicago stockyards while he was unloading fat steers to drop off there at the stockyards. And that would have been just about the time that stockyards was closing down, and still have that memory. I'm not sure how, because I can't seem to remember yesterday, but that one is still there. So I had stepped away from livestock, or my family had stepped away from a little bit while I was a younger child through grade school and junior high. And it wasn't until my freshman year in college that I was re-exposed to this. I was very, very fortunate to have an ag teacher by the name of Tom Poskin that pulled me aside my freshman year in high school, and for some reason decided that he was wanting to put me on the livestock judging team. That single event certainly changed my path. Prior to that, I hadn't been exposed to livestock judging. I hadn't been exposed to showing livestock to any extent. So my professional career was going towards professional motocross. I wasn't good enough. Would have never made it. Or possibly a cast member of Wild Kingdom out catching wild animals for zoos, and that's no longer popular. So those two options probably weren't going to work out very well. And luckily, when this ag teacher pulled me aside and said, let's go down this path, the very first contest I went to, I did not do well. I remember it was at the Illinois Spring Barrow Show, and that show had a judging contest alongside of it. And at the end of the contest, they're talking about how these hogs were placed, given reasons on them. They kept talking about how this one was sounder than the other one, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I had to ask the ag teacher afterwards exactly what they're talking about, and obviously he explained it to me and so forth, and fortunately took the time to educate me and coach myself along with some other high school students. And a couple years later, we win the state contest and go on to nationals, and we're very fortunate as sophomores and a junior to be first, third, and fourth in that national contest, winning the contest, which then gets you the invitation to go to the Scotland trip and compete internationally, and just an amazing event for us, and very thankful that I had that kind of experience. And Ryan will tell a little bit of his story here in a minute, that he didn't maybe have some of these same opportunities. And it's interesting how we can come from two different directions and kind of converge in the same path eventually. With that said, the trip to Europe and events like this, and it was quite the honor. I guess our community is very proud of what's going on, and it was taken as a huge success for a small high school like that to achieve something in that manner. During the trip to Europe, you compete in another international competition at the Royal Highland Show, and then you spend approximately 2 weeks touring different countries and visiting different operations and getting to understand how they do things. And it's very interesting that obviously at that point in my life, I wasn't exposed to a lot of those things, and it was very eye-opening for me to see some of those things. Along that same trip, you'll have other judging teams, whether it's dairy judging or horse judging, and I was coming through the FFA Livestock. But through the 4-H Livestock, there was a team from Colorado that included team members Joel Kelly, who's now in charge of Houston Stock Show, Kevin Auctioner, your host for RFD Cattleman to Cattleman, and Todd Wise, one of the leading sheep judges in the country right now that's out there and has had a very successful career and certainly doing a lot of judging across the country. People that have really made or had a huge impact in terms of connections and networking. For me, it's interesting to think back how these people come back and touch your lives later. And it was a tremendous experience for me. I can't say enough positive about that. Ryan, if I remember correctly, were you involved in judging in the high school ranks?
First off, we need to go back and clear a few things up here because, see, what you don't understand is you announced, or I announced last week, that this is what we're going to talk about. Well, Dale, people have been reaching out to me, talking to me.
Time out. Now, do we forget that we only talk about things that help my image?
Yeah, well, I, of course, was not at any of this, obviously, but I'm just telling you, people have come and talked to me and brought things up, and I just need a little clarification. So when you were over here at this judging contest, over there, overseas, across the pond, wherever you were, I heard that you might have stumbled upon to something that is referred to as the red light district. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct. There was something in, I believe, Amsterdam called the red light district. At that time in my life, I had no idea what this was all about. But I can promise you, as a young teenager, that was kind of like heaven.
Well, I mean, we're not going to go into the graphic details of what all I heard, but all you people at home listening, all you have to do is Google red light district in Amsterdam, and you will see what I'm talking about here. I am personally, I don't know if to be proud of you or appalled by you, because like all these stories that I have got from these people have just shaken my image of Dale Hummel to the core. Like, either you're holding back on me when we're like out in public and you don't want to do anything fun, or you are definitely a much different human being back in the day. And I think I need to like find that person you used to be, like bring him back.
It may have been a young teenager, a sophomore, junior in high school, with a couple younger teammates exploring the world with some influences like Joel Kelly and Todd Wise, and it was an experience. And I think that tradition is held on today. I don't believe that tour goes through Amsterdam. My daughter was actually supposed to make that tour this year, and I was a little nervous, just knowing that what's going on. And I've been on that tour a couple times, but yeah, it was quite the experience. I will attribute my events and being so shell-shocked by a red light district to just being sheltered and not exposed to the world. But it was very awakening, we'll say.
Well, I'm glad that you're blaming this on being an exploratory teenager and all. But there are stories that I also have that I will bring up later when the time suggests of you as an adult. That instance may have been an exploratory teenager, but the rest of this, you're going to have some more explaining to do, Lucy. But anyhow, I just had to bring that up. But
I appreciate your input. Wonderful.
I
think I'm looking forward to what else you have. It makes me a little bit nervous. On a more serious note, while in Europe and at the Royal Highland Show, we were allowed to compete in a judging contest. And when we say compete, it really, we're competing against other teams from Scotland and England, and we're on their home court, and you're really not going to have a lot of success because it's night and day different of what we're doing here. But the simple fact, and this really is a topic that I'm very passionate and very intrigued about, the livestock that were being shown there at that time, and I believe still till today, along with other countries throughout the world, is very different than what we're doing. They're still in the mode that we were in the 50s and 60s and maybe even into the 70s a little bit, where the livestock that they're showing in the ring are stock that can go out and perform in the commercial world. There's a direct correlation, and they're truly trying to better commercial livestock through the show ring. Obviously, we've evolved into what Ryan and I love, the junior stock show and all the benefits that come from that. But we have to be very honest in some of our species and in the junior stock show world, some of those maybe are not the most practical in the real world. And that's for another episode, but I'm excited. I'm going to talk Ryan into it, that we're going to do a history of the stock show world on another episode. And hopefully that'll be one that'll be awfully good. With that, from high school, I was very fortunate to be recruited by Dan Hogue at Blackhawk East and moved on to college there. Part of the whole process of that time, there wasn't a lot of money in my background or my parents, or it was going to be difficult to go to college. I'm not saying that we wouldn't be able to go through it, but was offered a scholarship to go to Blackhawk, and that really opened the door for me to go to college. And it wasn't on my radar to even attend college until my senior year, and it was for this purpose. In that at that time, Blackhawk was very dominant in the judging team ranks, and seemed like a logical place to attend, and certainly do not regret doing so. And Ryan, I know you've talked a little bit about going through Texas A&M. I believe you mentioned Blackhawk East to me at one time, but I'm pretty sure you did not attend.
And I mean, the further we get into this, we'll realize just exactly how different our stories are or whatever. I didn't judge much in high school. My county agent absolutely despised me, so I was not allowed to be on any of the 4-H judging teams in terms of that. So I did judge FFA, but basically I was so busy showing year round. There was nobody else in my chapter really that showed livestock or passionate about livestock judging or anything like that. So we would throw a team together for me to get to go compete at district, and hopefully I could pull them through and we could get to area and state. And that did happen all 4 years, and I did very, very well. But in terms of judging in high school, very limited. When it got time, unlike you, Dale, I was never, the thought of me going to college, that was never it was just going to happen. I mean, my mother would have probably shot me. But when I was a senior, I got a full ride to go to Southern Methodist University and study acting. And my mother and my stepfather at the time, John Bencaraba, I don't know if they actively talked about it, but my mother will tell you now that they knew that I would be gay sooner if that happened. So that was no. They decided that I was going to judge, even though, which I don't know how they came up with this, because I had never been on a team sport in my life. I had never ridden a school bus. All of these things, nothing, but they had decided that I was going to go to college and I was going to judge livestock. I didn't know much about it because I haven't done it much, but I knew that if you wanted to be good at it, you needed to go to a junior college. And at that time, Blackhawk was the most dominant one. So I thought if we were had asked, this is what they wanted me to do, then I needed to go try to be the best at it. I could. Well, no, that didn't work out either. I brought that idea up. I got shot down. Basically, I don't think my parents had a plan other than Texas A&M was 75 miles away. Chris Skaggs was there, and they could keep their thumb on me, and this whole, you're going to go to college to judge, that was just their whole story to try to keep me from being gay, as long as they possibly could. I swear to God. But that's how it got started.
And then you would have, when you went straight to Texas A&M, you would have been limited in terms of judging contests the first few years, but obviously were allowed to practice or continue that direction.
The first judging contest I ever entered collegiately was Arizona National, because that was the beginning of our team year. And so, no, It wasn't, you didn't have these contests like Express and all these other ones in December and stuff that you do now. Back then, you just started at Arizona. I didn't go to JUCO or any of those things. So, yeah, I was just kind of thrown in the deep end of the pool because I'm one of the most competitive people I know, even though I didn't have formal training before I was on the team. I did like seek out people and study and, do my own kind of study at home thing about collegiate livestock judging, but to have any formal coaching or training before we actually started as a team, none whatsoever at all.
Impressive, especially with how your senior year, I guess your second semester, junior and senior fall went. That is difficult, and a lot of you listening are aware. There are success stories of those that start out at the four-year university, and end up competing at the national contest in Louisville and having success. But the more traditional route, or the more common route, I should say, right now is going through the junior college ranks and getting that experience. And a lot of those junior college kids are going to transfer into the universities probably more experienced, more mature from a competition standpoint than those that started out there. But it can be achieved both ways. And each school's a little different. Each coach is a little different. But we still hear about it. But as Ryan talked about, the logical route at that time would have been through the junior college ranks. But he seemed to prevail without that.
I mean, they start at 8 in 4-H and you give reasons. And so, I mean, it's now a sport kind of like every other sport, that like baseball, you start out in little league, etc. And so it's even more competitive than it was a few years ago when I did it. But like, I personally believe that it doesn't matter if it's livestock judging or tic-tac-toe or archery or whatever it is. If you have a passion and you want to be a success, the only person that's going to stand in your way is you. I've just been one of those people that when I set my mind to something, didn't matter what it was, I've normally been pretty successful because will drive myself and everyone else around me absolutely insane to see what I want to accomplish because I'm just that determined at things. I think I'm not bragging on myself or don't want to use myself as an example, but I did not have the stereotypical judging background, anything like that, and was extremely successful. So for any of those kids out there that don't think they can go to JUCO or haven't been brought up judging through high school, if it's really what you want to do, it can be accomplished. You just got to believe it.
I agree with that, Ryan, and I can share a little bit of insight from my days as competing in the junior college ranks at Blackhawk and then through the University of Illinois under Coach Doug Parrott. I became a coach there at the University of Illinois when I went into graduate school, and I was basically the same age to a year older than some of those students, and you can imagine how that maybe went at that time. But it's interesting, once I got into the coaching ranks at the university, I had the junior college transfers that came in with a tremendous amount of experience, and some of those that started there at the 4-year that oftentimes were extremely academic, extremely intelligent. And exactly as Ryan is talking about, those that had the passion and desire to succeed, by the time Louisville came around, that playing field was pretty even, and they had just as good a shot at succeeding at the national contest as some of those that came through the junior college ranks. And it's interesting, and it even goes into recruiting. When I took a position at Joliet Junior College to coach and teach animal sciences, and had the opportunity to coach for over 10 years at the junior college level. And when I would go out to recruit students, obviously you want to recruit the kids that have had some success and they're proven. But just as importantly to me are those students, and it'd be similar to Ryan or even less judging experience than what Ryan would have had, but those students that maybe didn't have a coach, maybe didn't have a program they could jump into, maybe more of a show background, maybe it could be many different avenues that would have pushed them interested in being on a livestock judging team. But as long as they were dedicated, passionate, willing to succeed, and Ryan already mentioned it about himself being a very competitive spirit, I think Ryan and I have that in common. We're both competitive to extreme, maybe even to a fault at times.
Hey.
But with that said, I was just as excited to bring into the junior college ranks a freshman or a senior out of high school to become a freshman that was highly motivated, highly intelligent, maybe never gave a set of reasons ever in their life. So those of you that are thinking, wow, I've got all these other kids in the high school ranks that are out there competing and getting recognition. If you want to do this, you can get it done. And those students were some of the most valued. And as I reflect back in hindsight, it's amazing to me that yeah, there's success for those like myself that came through with experience in high school ranks. There's success with those like Ryan that judged a limited amount in high school, skipped the junior college, and then dominated in the senior college ranks. So don't think that you're too far behind to catch up. It's all about your passion, and it's about finding a coach that you can work with and a program that really fits you. And it's interesting as I matured as a coach, I went from a very aggressive, confrontational coach with the students when they would make a mistake to easing up a little bit and maybe coaching a little bit smarter versus harder. And hopefully as time went on, you became better and better at that. But it's amazing when I reflect back on the students that I'd worked with and the different coaching styles that I implemented from the very beginning. And the beginning would have been at the University of Illinois, and we worked hard, we had success, but I promise we probably had way too much fun.
Well, now that you brought that up, so again, some of your former.
I'm not sure who you're talking to here. Do you want to disclose that?
Oh no, no one ever discloses their sources, please. But yeah, so I need to look at my phone and make sure I get the exact wording on this correctly. So all of you that see Dale Hummel as this moral compass epicenter person that, would never do anything remotely questionable.
Now, Ryan, did I tell you my children occasionally listen to this podcast? Not always, but occasionally.
Oh, trust me, when I see your children, if they don't listen to the podcast, they're going to hear about this. But anyway, so back when Dale coached, he and his teams would put rats in a van of opposing schools, dead carcasses on their engines, deer tails or ears left under the seats or in the visors. Yeah. Would you care to explain, Coach Hummel, about all this?
I can't say that I was aware of many of those things. I think I had students that maybe were a little aggressive in practical jokes. And I think maybe our van had been sabotaged a couple times from a fellow Texan, maybe the Clarendon College, and a very, very wonderful coach by the name of Jerry Hawkins was always doing some things that would disrupt the trip, usually from Kansas City to Louisville. And I do believe I had a team that maybe retaliated and they got just a little bit carried away, but I try not to remember those things.
See, and my source is, not source, we're talking plural to the listeners of Beyond the Ring.
Plural.
Say that you were actually not only in on it, but maybe the idea man behind the majority of this.
I don't doubt that I was in on the retaliation, and I may have stopped alongside the road when there was a roadkill somewhere in that neighborhood. But your sources must just be confused. That was so long ago.
Oh, okay. Well, you heard it here first, people. I'm just saying.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. But I do think that, before we got into that, you brought up a good point, and I can't tell you how many kids that are interested in judging and all this other stuff, whether they contact me through social media or come up to me at shows, and they ask questions. And one of the biggest ones, there's two big ones I always get asked, but one of them is, how do you know where to go? I'm gonna take a lot of flack for this because I'm very good friends with a whole bunch of people that coach both junior college and senior college, ones that are supremely successful and ones that, not as well as them, but, strive hard and work hard just as much as the others. But I think it's an extremely personal thing, and it depends on what you want and what your goals are. If your goal is to go to college, JUCO, senior college, get a degree, use the judging team as a way to have social interaction, something to do, travel, etc., then my advice to you is go where your buddies are going. And I'm not talking about your local buddies. I mean, we've all have show friends from around whatever. Go somewhere you're going to know people and have a good time with. If you are serious about being a competitive force in the judging contest world, this is my advice to you. It is not about which team wins the most, which coach is coach of the year every year. It is about where you fit the best. And the only way you're going to figure that out is by going to as many of those schools in person, sitting down and talking to that person that is the coach of that team, seeing what your connection is with those people, how you vibe, and where are you going to fit in the dynamic of that program. And so that is what I tell people all the time. And I get that is not an answer that a lot of my judging team coach friends appreciate, because they're like, oh, push them here, push them here, push them here. But that's not what I believe. I do think that there's two different approaches to it, kind of like stock shows. A lot of people do it for the social element of it. And then there's a lot of us that are diehards and we're going to rip your head off to beat you. And it just depends on which way you're looking at it and what you need to do and where you will have the greatest experience.
Thank you, Ryan. Now that you've already exposed some of my stories, I'm assuming that during your time at Texas A&M, there was nothing unusual or unique that you encountered as a judging team member.
Oh, I was God's greatest bitch. I mean, this is all there is. Like, I never rode a school bus, ever. Not once. Not to a high school. I mean,
time out. You never rode a school bus through your education.
No, did not ride a school bus. Not even to go compete at like area or district FFA things. No, I was driven. I did not.
How did you avoid that?
My mother was president of the school board.
Now, while you're talking about the school bus, we had our two youngest children in a private school until first and third grade for them. And they'll tell the story now that their first year into public school, the biggest education they ever had in their life was a school bus. It was a culture shock to them. You missed out on something there.
I mean, it wasn't like something that like I didn't want to be on a school bus. It was, my mother was extreme, and still is to this day, even though she's like 126, she is extremely controlling. And by God, wherever I had to go, I was going to be driven by somebody. Not always her, thank God, or I wouldn't have survived this long, but I was going to get in a car that she put me in, and that's how I was going. So the fact that they decided that I was going to get in a van of 15-something kids, multiple vans, and travel across the world and all this stuff, I had never done anything like this. And much less stay with random people in a hotel room or anything like this. So I was not the best teammate in the world in terms of being on judge team. Of course, again, you add all that fact that I have never been exposed to any of this. I am literally the most competitive person I know. And I really didn't like a lot of people back then. So yeah, I was not Little Mary Sunshine of collegiate livestock judging, say the least. I'll never forget one of the funny stories is we had been working out around A&M and going back and forth places around there, and but we were winding down the winter semester and we're fixing to go on winter workout. And so our coach at the time, which I'm going to leave his name out of it because he didn't last very long, but our coach at the time sits us down and we're supposed to leave the next morning. And I think we were going to be gone for 8 days is what I remember. And he said, I think there was 21 of us. There was going to be 2 vans, but there was only 1 luggage trailer, all this other stuff. Long story short, he told everybody that you could only have 1 bag. Now, I must say that I am different now as an adult than I was as a college student, but I wasn't that much different. 1 bag was not going to cut it. So I waited till everybody got done, and I just kind of sat there, and he's like, what do you need? I said, well, dude, because he wasn't that much older than me. I said, there's 1 or 2 ways this can work. You said there's 1 bag. That's right. Only 1 bag, period. I said, that's fine. I said, but if that's really what you're going to post when we leave in the morning, then I'm coming in with the steamer trunk that would be like sent on the Titanic, or you can let me have multiple bags. Take your pick. But I promise you there's going to be less room if you let me put my stuff in more bags than the steamer trunk. I never won awards for congeniality, but I never aspired to be Miss Congeniality anyway.
And did you have an outfit or two outfits for every day at that point in your life?
Duh. And we got snowed in San Angelo, and we were stranded for 4 days. And guess who was the only person who had clothes? That would be me. And I didn't share.
You still had a fresh set of clothes every day.
Oh, hell, yes, I did.
That's impressive. And I think it's interesting. And as you talk about some of those things and that being a younger coach, and Ryan and I are both going to encourage anybody that wants to go into the livestock judging or competitive livestock judging to go for it. It was very beneficial for us. It allowed us to express our competitive drive, all kinds of different things. And it's something that we strongly encourage. But at the same time, when I'm asked or approached by whether it's high school students or even some of those that are already a freshman at junior college, do I really want to jump aboard the competitive livestock judging? I cannot explain to you. If you truly want to do it, I strongly recommend that you do it at the highest level you can personally and push yourself as hard as you can in the amount of time that it's going to take on your part, on your teammates' part, and dedication from your coach is hard for somebody to imagine that hasn't gone through a competitive livestock judging program. And that in itself is going to teach you a lot of life lessons, whether or not you win Louisville or Kansas City or any of those contests. It's a very disciplined sequence of events that you have to partake in to succeed. And getting along in the van with obviously Ryan didn't have a lot of luck with that because of his school bus experience, but it's hard to even wrap my head around the positives that can come from something like that. And we're always going to encourage it. But remember, by doing what you're doing in terms of livestock judging, you're going to have to set some other things aside. That may be not showing at Louisville or not showing at the American Royal if that's something that you've been used to doing, or lots of other things. Your weekends are going to be dominated. A lot of times in the afternoon is going to be dominated, all for the better, all for good. But it does take that kind of commitment. Ryan alluded to earlier how competitive it is, and it is extremely competitive. And it's something that you better push yourself. You better do everything you can if you want to succeed in that arena.
Totally get what Dale's saying there. And I really wasn't prepared for any of it. But I do think, not just because I was competitive, but I learned so much about myself, like being in that van, being in a team environment, etc., stuff like that, that I never would have learned before. And granted, all of it wasn't real pretty about me. I'm not going to say it was, but I learned so many things about myself on what I needed to do in the future, not only to grow as a person, but also situations and areas that I'm like, I will not thrive in this situation. So there is no sense in even going there. We just need to move on from that. I think you learn a lot more than just how to compete as a team and compete as an individual in livestock judging. I do think, and it was just 1 year for me, but I learned more about myself as a person in that 1 year competing on a livestock judging team than I probably learned about myself almost in my entire life up till that time.
That's interesting. I think a lot of those that have competed on the competitive teams and ones that are out there trying to win those contests would tell you that the exact same thing. And one topic that Ryan and I have discussed before, and he brought it up to me, Ryan, you've talked about it being an even playing field. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
One of the things that I value the most in terms of the livestock judging competition or collegiate livestock judging is I think that more than almost anything else that I have been associated with, especially in the livestock show industry, I think it is a more even playing field than any other type of competition. And I think that's for several reasons. I think that there is far less politics that come into play in terms of a livestock judging team than most. I think having to have 5 kids that mark and they've all got to come through for you on that given day and that given time, that makes it, because not everybody's going to have a good day. or most people are not always going to have a good day when the pressure's on. And so that's another thing that just kind of is a stabilizing force between it all. I just think there are so many different parts of that competition that make it the most fair. And I don't want to use the word wholesome, but that's the only one that's really coming to my mind right now, because there aren't outside forces. Once you hand those cards off to that group of youngsters and they go down on that floor, there are very few outside forces that can affect what happens from the time you mark your first card to the time you shut your last reason store on that given day.
It's interesting because when you talk about that, you're in control. Is it possible that a Reasons listener might recognize a kid here or there? Absolutely. But I can assure you, I found plenty of success through the livestock judging ranks collegiately, and through my junior college competitions. There would not have been a Reasons listener that would have had any idea who I was. So the political side of it wasn't there, and you can still succeed if you were able to mark those cards and get through an accurate set of reasons and do it with a sense of personality and confidence and get the job done. It's a wonderful thing. Ryan had talked a little bit to me earlier about his experiences in going into the Reasons room. And Ryan, if you would share just a little bit of that with others, how your mindset going to that room and what you thought maybe was on the other side of that door listening to you.
My story is going to be probably different than almost anyone that's ever done this. And so, again, don't judge everything by my story. I'm just sharing with you how, even though you may not fit the typical mold, etc., you can still go on and try to achieve and be successful. I was very well known, and I'm going to say that 95% of the Reasons takers at all the contests knew who I was. It didn't work to my advantage, I guess is the best thing I should say, until they listened to me talk. What people thought was I was a really rich kid that parents spent a whole lot of money on their animals. I got everything handed to me, and I went in there and I won a lot. And that was the general consensus of who I was, and that's fine. But I would go in those rooms, and even though I may not know who that person was, I'd recognize them, or they would know who I would, and I would start giving my presentation, and I cannot tell you the number of times per contest that someone that was a Reasons taker would say along the lines of, I didn't expect that. I never thought that you would be, that good. One person literally, guy gave me a 50. He said, I thought you were a complete dumbass before you walked in here. And so, it was almost the reverse of politics for me. They listened to me, and when they did, they realized that I had some knowledge and some intelligence and definitely was good at presenting and giving reasons. And so it wasn't politics because they knew who I was, because they knew who that I was. They knew who they thought I was before I walked into that room. And I changed their whole idea and perception of me in the course of 2 minutes. And so that's just my story right there.
And I think I can follow up with what Ryan's saying there. And I think a lot of you that are listening realize the success that Ryan had in the collegiate Reasons room. I think it's for the most part unprecedented. And Ryan and I have visited about this many times. And through my coaching experiences and maturing, that same high school coach, Tom Poskin, that was my ag teacher, later in life, I would be at the North American International judging contest with my collegiate team, and he would often come up and we'd go out for dinner. He'd listen to some Reasons. And one of my last years of coaching, he was very insistent that he wanted to get through the students that were going to be competing the following day, that you have to get that Reasons listener to like you. You need to go in with personality and make sure that they connect with you in some manner. If they like you, they're going to forgive some of those little glitches that you have, or maybe that slight inaccuracy. And I think there's a lot to that. And Ryan would come in, I think, with personality, with a lot of unique things. And the fact that maybe they expected something different, that connection was made, and they were kind of wowed. So even if you take it to someone like myself or anybody out there that maybe that Reasons listener doesn't know, I promise you, If you go in there with some personality, with some confidence, with some accuracy, and present yourself well, you're going to get along. And I tell the story that one of my students took it maybe a little bit to an extreme on getting those reasons listeners to like him. A young man with a cattle background was going into, I believe, a market lamb set, and maybe wasn't the best at describing market lambs, but it was the last set of the day, and he grabs a Mountain Dew before he heads to give his last set of reasons. He takes it into the reasons listener and said, the last official I gave to said to bring you something to drink. You're probably wearing out about this time. Something that simple. And maybe he deserved a 48 or 49. I don't remember what it was. But he had never given me a market lamb set that was that good. And I think it was honestly all about the simple gesture that he brought a Mountain Dew to this guy. And he's been sitting there listening to reasons all day. And that was a little bit different, that he made some kind of connection there. And sometimes things that simple, I don't even know if it's legal or not, but just trying to get the point across, get that connection, make yourself likable in some manner.
We didn't even talk about this, but you bringing this up, that's the other big question that I get from all these kids is they do know that I was pretty lucky to be really, really good in the reasons room, and I had a lot of success there. And they ask, what are tips? What are this? And I've been fortunate enough to get to listen to a lot of reasons in terms of collegiate contest, etc. And I think what you're saying right there is vitally important. And my advice to all of them when they ask me, and all these kids that are out here listening right now, is if you can make a connection with that reasons taker before you ever start, you're going to beat 90% of them. And I tell the story all the time. I was sitting in Houston. Houston's a huge junior college contest. And so we had just, it had been a long day. And I think that year it might even still be the biggest one that's ever been, but it had been a very, very long day. And so when the kids come in, I look down at my sheet, see their number, and so I look down and I said, "Are you 21?" And this boy was like, "No, but I sure wish I was." And right there, he had me. From that moment, I set down my pen. He had me from that moment on. It's just like the Tom Cruise movie. You had me at hello. He had me right there. And he gave a great set. And he got the highest score of the day from me. But I wanted to listen to every single word that kid said because he got me before we ever started. And that's not going to happen every single time. Obviously, every reasons taker in the world's not going to ask a kid that's not 21 if they are. I can't tell you the number of times I would go when I was competing, and it'd be a lot of these times we would give reasons in other judging teams' rooms. And like you could see when I walk in, I saw this one guy like eyeing up this room because it was an absolute mess. I'd be like, "Well, I can promise you this wasn't my room," or, stuff like that. Find a way to make a connection with those people. If it's not possible, I promise you, you have about 15 seconds at the beginning to make whoever's sitting there pay attention to what you have to say for the rest of the minute, 45 seconds, or you're toast. And that's not being rude. That's being real.
I'm going to take it a step further, Ryan. And if you don't make that connection with me, and I don't know if it's a smile or your unique, pleasant personality when you come in the room. For example, if you come in just with a little bit more arrogance than ideal and you get started and you can't back that up, guess what? That's working to your disadvantage. We talk about confidence and be careful in that reasons room. We like the confidence, but be cautious on approaching the arrogance side when you're giving to me, because if you come in that way, you better be dead on or you're going to be in trouble. And Ryan says if you can't make that connection in that before you even start that set, you've got 15 seconds. I can think, I guess the last contest I would listen to, and I believe Ryan was an official there at Arizona National. If you did not make the connection when you came in the room, you had about 5 seconds from me. And I'll be very honest, if you didn't hit me pretty strong, it's a lot harder to listen to the good rather than point out the false or inaccurate statements that you might have within your set. And that sets the whole tone. You can put that reasons listener into a mindset that they're either going to be listening for the good or they're going to try to pick out the bad so they can beat you up a little bit. Just the reality of it. I'm not saying good, bad, indifferent. Just it is what it is.
But the reason that it is a lot easier to find the bad than listen to the good, I'm going to tell you why. Because a reasons taker listens to the same set all day long. And you know those animals, and those kids know those animals. And the good things everybody picks out are pretty much the same. And so you hear it time and time again. When people are inaccurate or lie, as Dale would probably say, about what's actually going on in the class and the animals, it's never the same. Very, very few times do the same two kids or same dozen kids come in and lie or say the same inaccuracies about the same animal. So you tune into that because it's something you haven't heard before. And that's what sticks in your mind.
It absolutely does. And I know that Ryan has also talked about the facial, and we talk about that personality, and he's always communicated to anybody that asks him to give your set in the mirror. We oftentimes used to videotape and play those videotapes back, but I could let Ryan go on forever, I'm sure, about his thoughts and standing in front of that mirror and how much he did that. It sounds simple. It may sound stupid to some of you, but I can't tell you the benefits that you're going to gain by having to put yourself in front of that mirror and go through it time and time again and watch yourself. Make sure you have a pleasant expression. Make sure you're not doing something that's annoying or distracting or going any wrong direction.
Well, Scooter Lewis will tell you because he lived with me every semester in college or undergrad except my very first one. I didn't do any of the junior college or anything like this, but I practiced reasons all through undergrad. And it was just that. I would stand in front of a mirror night after night after night. Obviously, I wasn't working out, so I didn't have sets that I had, but I would just give sets, make up stuff, whether it was baseball caps or Beanie Babies, because that was a big thing back in the day. Whatever. I would just make up stuff, and I would watch myself in the mirror over and over again. And all these kids now are like, well, I can do the same thing with my phone. It's not the same. And why I do not believe it's the same is because when you're watching a video on your phone, there's going to be a notification, a text, a something that is going to pop up while you're doing that is going to distract you. If you will leave all that stuff and shut yourself in your bathroom door and just watch yourself in the mirror and see how you present, what you look like, how you sound, I don't think people understand the differences in body language and how that comes across, because when you're listening to 500 kids, it is little cues like that are going to make differences in a 45, 44, 46. I mean, and sometimes a point is a point, regardless. I cannot stress enough, it's not the same watching yourself on a video. Because when it's just you and you alone in the mirror, your only focus is on what you appear like to that reasons taker.
That's interesting to me, and there's a lot of different tactics that coaches will use out there, and it'd be great to spend all kinds of time sharing some of those. I can promise you, and I talked about earlier how I thought I matured as a coach and maybe didn't scream at the students quite as much later in coaching than I did early on, but it's interesting because if I had a team that I thought was very capable, and for some reason I didn't think they were putting out the effort, I could get pretty cranky pretty quick. And I can remember a trip on the way to Denver. I don't know if it was it was a full week working out on the way out there, and it was -5, and it was miserable. But for some reason, even though I thought they needed to be focused when it was that cold out, the team that I was dragging was not. They were a team that was very capable. They had won reasons at Kansas City and Louisville, and I expected they would do the same at Denver, so I was pushing pretty hard. I had that team, and this is a mistake in coaching is what I want to point out, not one of my highlights by any means. I had that team so upset with me as far as how hard I was pushing. I was driving the van that day, and there's nobody in the passenger seat, nobody in the front bench seat. Everybody had jammed themselves in the back couple seats just to try to avoid me. That is probably not the right direction, and I can also think about the first 5 or so years. We'd spend a week before going into a competition staying up late, giving reasons every night. It may be the night before the contest, and I still see some coaches doing it today. We'll be up until 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night giving reasons. In hindsight, in my older years or more experienced years of coaching, I can look back on that and think, well, this is crazy. If they don't have it by now, we're probably not going to make that much improvement in one night. That my last few years in coaching, and I think there's a few coaches that'll do it now, that afternoon before the contest, it was called nap time. We would take a 2 or 3 hour nap, or they'd be allowed just to relax and chill out. And I think having a clear head and being a little more well rested going to that contest is huge, and hopefully paid off some benefits. And that proved much more successful for me than running them hard every single day, and especially that night before going to the contest. But you're going to find lots of different techniques and lots of different coaching styles out there. And it's interesting to me. I really enjoy hearing about some of the different methods that have been used over the years. Ryan, I have a question for you that I get asked, and I know that you have as well. And my daughter actually brought it up to me that some of her judging teammates and others, how do these young evaluators go from collegiate livestock judging into judging shows in the real world? What kind of guidance can you give them to move or make that transition? And actually, I hear Ryan tell us all the time, everybody wants him to come judge a show in Michigan or Florida. And Ryan, what do you tell them?
Well, for some reason, I don't understand it, but like, people just think that I can show up and judge a show. That's not how it works. You actually have to be asked by who's ever in charge, whether it's a board or a fair manager or whatever. They have to call you or contact you and ask you to come sort that show. The gay cannot just show up at the location and, say, I am here and I am going to sort your cow show or your pig show or your goat show now. No, that's not how it works. You got to be asked. A lot of people do use being on a judging team as their first step into judging actual stock shows, because that is the norm. I've told the story 1,000 times, like, to get to judge the shows that after I went down this path and this is what we're doing, you wanted to sort, there was a very simple formula on how you had to do it. You went to junior college or senior college, you were on a collegiate livestock judging team, whether you were wildly successful, marginally successful, you were respected, you got a degree, whether you were a male or female, you got married, you became normal life, successful in your profession, and you start judging throughout this thing. Of course, I kind of took all that formula, wadded up, and threw it out the window and went down a different path. But for all those kids that ask how you transition from the judging van to into the stock show ring, the best 2 pieces of advice I can give you are, number 1, any time they call anybody, you show up at the beginning. And I can say this more than anybody else, because to this day, any time they call and I can get to that show, because I'm not booked by another one, or there's just not something that is absolutely impossible for me to miss out on, if they can pay my expenses at least, I'm going to show up. And so the way to do it first is, do not think that you are above judging any show, because I'm not above judging any show. There are no small shows, there are only small-minded sorters. And don't ever forget that, people. So show up. The second thing that I'm going to tell you to do is you have to be honest and accurate. Honesty and accuracy will take you further and farther in this deal than you ever think. I'm talking about you call it exactly how it's supposed to be. And I don't care if your judging team buddy is sitting behind the pen with a hog there. If he's not supposed to win, he doesn't win. I don't care if it's a jackpot show or a county fair or what. He doesn't win. And and if he does win because he's got the best one, you better describe in detail why that one wins. People are going to listen to you for about 3 minutes. It's on the 3 minutes on their animal, or the one right in front of them, or the one right after them. And that's all they're going to listen to you. They're not going to listen to you all day. And so you have to constantly be on, because those 300 people are going to listen for one segment of the day, and that's their opinion, and they're going to take it and spread it throughout the country and the industry. And so honest and accuracy and show up.
And that seems simple. And those are...
It seems simple, but I'm telling you, they don't listen.
And it's not that hard. I can use myself as an example, and these aren't glorious examples by any means. I have judged Murray-Gate Gray cattle in Canada, where my champion female was about waist high. I can remember my senior year in college getting asked to judge a county fair, and every time they'd seem to ask you to judge some of those county fairs when I was that age, it would always encompass all cattle, sheep, and hogs. Goats weren't being shown for the most part, or meat goats weren't being shown at that part, so you didn't usually have to do that. But they'd ask you to come, are you able to do all the species? And say, sure, I'm happy to do that. And following the same guidance that somebody else had given me that Ryan just gave you, if you're asked and you can fit it into your schedule, you better show up. And it just is what it is. So I get to this county fair and I go through the cattle and I sort the hogs and I sort the sheep. And I'm thinking, well, it's pretty early in the afternoon. This is going to be a relatively short day. I look across to another ring, and there's pygmy goat people getting their goats out, and they're lining up to come in the ring. And I'm thinking, well, I'll just stick around. I've never watched a pygmy goat show. I could tell you what a pygmy goat was, but that would have been about the extent of it. And the next thing you know, the superintendent goes, okay, we're going to get started on the pygmy goat show. And he's looking at me, and I'm thinking, oh, this can't be real. I'm not going to jump into a pygmy goat show. But yeah, I had agreed to do all species. I didn't ask what those species were. And I proceeded, and it was not only a pygmy goat show, it had been a sanctioned show the day before. So they had 150, 200 pygmy goats at this show, and they all decided to come out, and I had no idea. And I was young, I was nervous, I was flustered. I wasn't thinking clearly, as maybe an excuse I can use. But I go to sort them just like I would a lamb show, and they're lined up, and I thought, well, I'm going to have them walk them. I could at least find some structural differences or something. And I asked them to walk. They pick the dang pygmy goat up and they walk around the ring and they come back and they set them down. And I'm lost. I'm not thinking clearly. So I thought I'd just start pulling them in, act like I know what I'm doing. So I just start pulling in the ones that look like they've done real well. Their hair coat's good. They put on some weight. They're probably the heavier, bigger ones in the group. And it wasn't until my ride home that I realized I probably just sorted those damn things backwards, because I did nothing but size them up, biggest to littlest.
And you were in a pygmy goat show.
I was in a pygmy goat show. But I did learn my lesson. But those are the things you guys, that's part of life. That's part of the experience. And that's going to make you a better person. And I'm sure Ryan can share stories with you about some similar situations. And it's part of it. And don't think that you're too good to go out and do that show, because you're not. You need to do those things, and it's critical. And I'm going to add to it just a little bit, and I maybe ask Ryan for one of his stories from his early judging years, or even a recent one that's similar. But be careful how you conduct yourself with your judging team members, with your coach, with other faculty, with everybody in general, because a lot of people are watching, especially if you're talented, especially if you're one that may be one of those chosen ones that gets to go out and judge quite a few shows, because it's very seldom that I'll spend more than a few days without getting a call from somebody that may be sitting on a show committee or a show manager that says, hey, do you know this person, or this young person that just came out of the judging ranks, or even somebody that's maybe been judging for a while? What's your opinion? And it isn't always whether or not they're qualified to sort those animals, but did that person make a positive impression on you? Are they going to go out there and do exactly what Ryan said in his second part there? Sort those animals as they should be and not worry about who's standing behind them. Those things are critical, and the impression you give people is gonna go a long ways. And it's not always ideal. And Ryan and I have discussed this, how some judges are selected and how some show managers have a lot of control over who's judging what. It's not a perfect world, but you better put yourself in a position to do everything you can to get that call, and do so by judging every show that's offered, being honest, being accurate, exactly as Ryan put it. And it's huge. It just is something that you have to go through, and you have to hold true to that. If you can do that, you're going to start getting more and more of those calls, and that's a great experience. Ryan, do you have any stories? I love your stories about some of these shows that you judge.
I can tell stories from fan to judging shows I won, but like, my stories and my background are never going to be the same as anybody else's, because as I tell people all the time while describing my life, you just can't make this up. It's just how it is. And so from the time when I was judging and I told one of the girls in our van, if you're not ready to slit your wrist for this team to be successful, you need to get out because we need the van and luggage space. Or from when we were at Louisville, and I literally threatened to rip a girl's ponytail out of her scalp during the judging contest. So yeah, again, my stories aren't the norm, but they did happen. Even when I was first starting judging and stuff like this, I probably didn't pay as much attention to this because I knew no matter what I did the night before the show, I was going to go out there and sort it honestly because I had seen the other side and been on the other side of politics, because people say all the time how judges who sort, whether they're political or not, and that's a whole nother episode, but it's just as easy to get taken out by a judge as it is to get put up. And so I'd seen all sides of that before. And so I knew what I was going to do was going to be right in my mind the next day. So, but I think what Dale was saying about be careful and watch yourself, I'm going to tell you first off, the night before the show, whatever hotel I'm at, I'm going to go down to the bar and I'm going to have a few drinks. I'm not going to get white girl wasted, but I'm going to have a few drinks. And the reason why is because when I have a few drinks, I actually can turn my brain off at night easier and get more sleep. And you have to have sleep to be a good judge. And otherwise, if I get 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, that's about my regular routine. So yes, I'm going to go downstairs to the bar. I'm going to have a few drinks. And I'm going to talk to anybody that talks to me. That's part of it. But now, more than ever, everybody pretty much knows it doesn't matter who comes down there and buys me a drink or who talks to me. It's not going to matter the next day. If you're just starting out, you're not going to have that yet. And so I'm not telling you not to go downstairs, not to talk to people when you're at a restaurant the night before the show. Don't be weird about it. But just be careful, and because you never know who's going to watch. And then again, no matter what you do, as long as you go out there and you sort it the way you think it honestly should be, and you can back it up on the mic, you're not going to have to worry about what you did the night before.
Excellent advice. And while we're on that, just Ryan, what has been your favorite show that you've judged? Do you have one?
I'm going to sound like I'm just promoting Phoenix, but Phoenix has been, the past 2 years, has been a really fun show to sort because of the atmosphere they create for the youth out there. They are awesome to work with. It's extremely exhibitor friendly. So that's, of course, it's the only major I've ever sorted. So that would definitely be one that was the big, huge thing for me and a huge impact on my life, and very appreciative to them. I keep going back to this show and they're going to think, I mean, I got the job already for this year if it happens, so I'm not campaigning to get another one. I judged the Southeast Iowa Final Drive last year. And for those of you who are aware of that system in Iowa, if you're Grand Reserve at your county fair, you go on to kind of a regional deal. I sorted all species at this deal. I have never been to a show where the crowd was it was electric. Those kids, even the ones, I mean, there was only a very select few animals in each division because you had to win your county or be reserve in your county to get there. But even the kids that were just there to cheer on their friends from that county, I've never been in an atmosphere like that before. And I wrote probably a novel about it on Facebook the night after that show. But because of this show, that show right there, people tell me all the time that me going to every show that calls and not being selective in the ones that I judge and stuff like that hurts me as much as it helps me. I'm going to tell you something, though. Because that show, the Southeast Iowa Final Drive, called, and I said yes, I had the best judging experience of my life so far. And if I wouldn't have said yes, I'd have never got to have that. So that's another reason that you're not better than any show. Again, there are no small shows. There are only small-minded sorters. I believe that with everything in me.
That is a good story. And when you get called to do a show in Iowa, you had no idea it was going to be like that. And it turned out to be It turned out to be a great one. I've got, if I'm going to say, here's where I want to sort her, I've for some reason taken a little bit different direction maybe than where Ryan's at. But my goal in sorting a show is the Palermo Cattle Show in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I would love to be able to have the opportunity to go down there and sort at that show. It's old school. You have 100, 200, 300 commercial producers there watching the show. It's like Ryan said, just electric to be involved in that and feel the passion and the crowd's enthusiasm, all of those things. And guys, you just got to do what you can. If that's your passion, if that's your goal, start taking those steps to get down that path. And we certainly wish you the best of luck. I've enjoyed this episode. Hopefully it's educational for some of you that are thinking about taking the path of competitive livestock judging and making that transition from the judging team into the show career. And I think Ryan's advice is as good as it gets. And just think about the path Ryan has taken. I promise you, he took the bumpy road. He didn't take the easy path, and he's still going in the direction that his dreams led him. And his competitive nature, his passion, his steps 1 and 2 that he discussed with you is exactly why he's making that direction in terms of judging almost every show in the country. And I tell Ryan, and he doesn't ever want to admit to this, it's almost a groundswell, because when they hire Ryan, the exhibitors know they're going to get a fair chance. They know they're going to get the animal described correctly. Everybody's going to have different priorities, but like a lot of people will talk about, if you're showing to somebody, as long as you know what direction they're going, they describe your animal accurately and are consistent in terms of the priorities that they're using, I'll show to those people every day. And if I don't win that show, it's because I didn't take him the right one. And I consider Ryan to be one of those. So I strongly encourage you guys to take that path. It's certainly one that's proved successful for Ryan. And there were a lot of hurdles in his path that he's had to overcome. But following those 2 basic rules, I think has certainly paid off well for him.
I don't ever think that I'm the sharpest or the smartest sorter out there. I think it's hard-pressed to find someone who cares about the kids as much as I do, and who wants it to be entertaining, and who desperately tries to be accurate and is 100% honest. And that has served me very well. And, for any of y'all that are out there listening, it doesn't matter what your background is. Again, I'm not trying to pump myself up at all, but if I can do it, I promise you can. You just got to believe, and you've got to know that you are worth it.
Excellent, Ryan. Thank you for that advice. Next week's episode should be as good as they get. Ryan and I will have the privilege to bring Dan Hogue into our discussion. This episode will focus on a judge's perspective of the stock show world. It should be exciting. I appreciate your time and listening to Ryan and I today. Until next week, be safe, and we'll visit with you then.
Go live your lives, people. Get out of the house.